Tonight, Jamaica yesterday recorded 248 new cases of COVID-19 and 4 COVID-19 related deaths, taking confirmed cases to 22,267 and the COVID-19 death toll to 410. Minister of Tourism says today's Global Tourism, Resilience and Crisis Management Center's lecture highlighted many concerns, especially regarding the COVID-19 vaccination.
We think that the bigger issue is about testing, that we know the status of the visitor by virtue of the testing.
Still tonight, the government extends the current travel restrictions and protocols for travelers from the UK until Monday, March 15, 2021. And Chief Justice of Jamaica, Justice Brian Sykes, pushes back at reports that the 9-month sentence imposed on a man from St. Anne who pleaded guilty to illegal possession of firearm and ammunition has angered the police.
The judge at the parish court can't take account of allegations that are unsubstantiated. The judge has to focus on the offense for which the person has been convicted.
Good evening. Jamaica yesterday recorded 248 new cases of COVID-19 and 4 newly confirmed COVID-19 related deaths, while 2 deaths were placed under investigation. Now, this takes the total of confirmed cases to 22,267 and the confirmed COVID-19 death toll to 410. The country also recorded 3 COVID-19 related deaths as coincidental. According to the Ministry of Health and Wellness, the latest deaths consist of a 57-year-old male from St. Catherine, a 66-year-old male from St. Elizabeth, a 57-year-old woman from St. James, and a 103-year-old woman from St. Catherine, whose death was previously reported as under investigation. Meanwhile, the ministry said there are now 8,466 active cases of the virus on the island. Of the newly reported cases, there were 111 males and 130 females, ranging in age from 4 months to 97 years. The cases were recorded in Kingston and St. Andrew with 91 cases, St. Catherine 46, Clarendon recorded 33 cases, St. James and St. Thomas recorded 15 cases each, Trelawney recorded 10 cases, St. Mary 9, Manchester and St. Anne recorded 7 cases each, Hanover 6, St. Elizabeth recorded 5 cases, while Portland and Westmoreland recorded 2 cases each. The island also recorded 66 recoveries yesterday, taking the total of recovered persons since the outbreak locally to 13,173. In other news tonight, the Department of Correctional Services, DCS, is reporting that a female inmate who was incarcerated at the South Camp Adult Correctional Center in St. Andrew passed away on Tuesday at the Kingston Public Hospital, KPH, after being hospitalized with COVID-19 symptoms on February 19. In a statement yesterday afternoon, the DCS advised that the Independent Commission of Investigations, INDECOM, has been informed of the development and the inmate's next of kin has been contacted. The DCS says another inmate from the same facility was admitted to hospital yesterday with symptoms of COVID-19. Still making news tonight, during the Global Tourism, Resilience and Crisis Management Center, GTRCMC's lecture series today, held under the theme Restarting Economies Through Tourism, Vaccine Politics, Global Priorities and Destination Realities, Minister of Tourism Edmund Bartlett says today's lecture highlighted many concerns, especially that of the COVID-19 vaccination.
The lecture series this morning highlighted a number of key areas of concern. The first, of course, was the disparity, global disparity between rich and poor countries with regards to the acquisition of vaccines and the use of vaccine. The second was the vaccine hesitancy, which is a feature of concern to us all, as a number of countries are giving statistics that are frightening in relation to the uptake on the part of citizens of the vaccine. That will inhibit the recovery program, not just for tourism, but for global economy. The third critical consideration, I think, was in terms of public education and the extent to which the public understood better about the vaccine and how it is to be administered, utilized, and its value. As a part of that public education is to enable everyone to appreciate that the vaccine does not represent a remedy, that it is not a solution to the problem in its totality, but it's a critical part of the prevention mechanism, and that countries and people who are vaccinated have a lesser tendency to contract the virus. But it is not that they will never get the virus. Therefore, the protocols that have been established in terms of wearing masks and so on must be continued.
Minister Bartlett further outlined other key areas that were discussed, one being the prohibition of workers if they refuse to take the COVID-19 vaccine.
Another key area of it was whether there would be any inhibition in the global space with regards to people who did not use the vaccine. In other words, can travel be facilitated without the vaccine? Is there going to be a global standard or requirement for all people who are traveling across borders to show proof that they have had a vaccine? I think that the discussion came down in favor of not having that as a requirement, because it will inhibit travel, and it also puts those people who opted not to have a vaccine, although we want to discourage it, but the right to decide not to have a vaccine, is important and has to be upheld. So we think that the bigger issue is about testing, that we know the status of the visitor by virtue of the testing. So if you test negative, it's a better way of enabling travel than even to say you must be vaccinated.
The event brought together stakeholders from across the world to engage, share information, and develop long-term policies and strategic solutions, best practices, and case studies in tourism, pandemic, and economic resilience management. Still tonight, the Shadow Minister of Tourism, Senator Janice Allen, says the failure on the part of the government to provide a clear timetable for a rollout of a national vaccination program is causing heightened concerns among hoteliers and other tourism interests. Senator Allen, in a statement, said, quote, "The Cayman Islands, Barbados, Turks and Caicos, and Trinidad and Tobago are among a growing list of countries that have already commenced vaccination programs. As a major tourist destination in the Caribbean region, Jamaica is now at a serious disadvantage vis-à-vis its regional counterparts," end quote. Now, with the surge in COVID-19 cases, the opposition is insisting that the government does an assessment of the impact of the extended crisis on arrivals and say whether adjustments are being made to mitigate anticipated blows. The opposition says they are also concerned that hoteliers and other players in the industry are still awaiting COVID-19 relief grants that were promised to them several months ago. The statement from the opposition also highlighted that the tourism sector has faced challenging times over many decades and has always rebounded. The global appeal of Jamaica's tourism product is evidence of this. However, the present situation of crime, COVID-19, and the lack of a robust vaccination campaign presents an existential threat to many in the industry, if not to the industry itself. In the meantime, the government of Jamaica will be extending the current travel restrictions and protocols for travelers from the United Kingdom until Monday, March 15, 2021. This means that the current ban on direct flights from the UK will remain in place. All non-Jamaicans who have been in the UK within the last 14 days prior to their intended arrival date in Jamaica, who may seek to enter the island through another country, will not be permitted to enter Jamaica. Jamaicans who have been in the UK within the 14 days prior to intended arrival date, who seek to enter the island through another country will be tested and detained in state quarantine for a minimum of 48 hours until the results are returned. If negative, they will be allowed to transfer to home quarantine to complete the 14-day mandatory quarantine period. If positive, they will remain in isolation at a location that is approved by the Ministry of Health and Wellness. The government says they are awaiting the results of genome sequence testing of samples sent to the Caribbean Public Health Agency, CARPHA, to determine the possible presence of new strains of the SARS-CoV-2 virus in Jamaica. The restrictions will be reviewed following receipt of these test results. Meanwhile, the government has moved to assure users of the JAM COVID-19 application and the public at large that a comprehensive review of all aspects of the site, application, and associated databases is being undertaken, and changes will be implemented with a view to further hardening security and strengthening all security features. Now, this assurance comes as questions continue to be raised about when the government became aware of a recent breach of the site, whether said breach has been fully rectified, and how much, if any, personal and sensitive data may have fallen into the wrong hands. Meanwhile, the company responsible for the site, the Amber Group, shut down reports in the public domain that there was a possible second breach of the site. Founder and Chief Executive Officer of the Amber Group, Dushyant Savadia, has described recent reports alleging a second vulnerability on the JAM COVID website as deeply concerning. In a press release, Savadia explained that the exposed environmental ENV file being described as a second vulnerability is one that contained expired information along with links that had been previously made redundant. These files do not contain any personal information from JAM COVID-19 users, nor do they enable access to such information, he said, while noting that login information to its applications and websites is further protected with multi-factor authentication to prevent access. He further stated that upon taking a closer look at the file that was referenced, one would see that the database, URL, and credentials were already rectified last week. Amber says it remains very concerned about what it says were certain reports being published in mainstream and referenced on social media platforms which are seemingly defamatory. In this regard, the company is currently consulting with its legal team. Amber says it continues to work to mitigate continued cyber attacks, hacking, and mischievous players seeking to disrupt and interfere, including these occurrences with a system designed to facilitate safe re-entry into our borders. The company further stated that it wishes to clarify that the JAM COVID-19 system was developed to meet an urgent need to facilitate controlled re-entry to Jamaica. The comprehensive system was built, developed, and enhanced over a 10-month period, the company said. Savadia added that Amber stands behind its work and contributions to Jamaica in the fight against the pandemic as they continue to cooperate fully with the investigation by the authorities. Continuing with the news, the University Hospital of the West Indies is dismissing claims that it has been operating without water since Saturday. In a statement made yesterday, the hospital highlighted it has water storage for several days should there be water restrictions from the National Water Commission or any disaster. The response emerged from allegations that there was no water on the premises for several days. Still making Mello TV news, Chief Justice of Jamaica, Justice Brian Sykes, has pushed back at reports that the 9-month sentence imposed on a man from St. Anne who pleaded guilty to illegal possession of firearm and ammunition has angered the police.
It is being said that, according to the news report, the police reportedly upset because of a light sentence of alleged gangster. And according to the report, he was before the parish court and was found guilty, I think after a plea, of illegal possession of firearm and ammunition. Well, the point is that there is no offense known as alleged gangster. there is a statute called the Criminal Justice Suppression of Criminal Organizations Act, and if the police are of the view that they have sufficient evidence to convince a court to the requisite standard that this person is indeed a member of a criminal organization, then that is a charge that ought to have been laid, and then the person would have been tried or placed before a judge of the Supreme Court. But the judge at the parish court can't take account of allegations that are unsubstantiated. The judge has to focus on the offense for which the person has been convicted. That is what the judge has to focus on. And in any event, with parish court judges, there is a limit to the sentence that they can give. And the report does not indicate the remarks by the sentencing judge, which the Court of Appeal has now obliged all judges at whatever level in the trial courts to indicate why a particular sentence was chosen. So I'm sure that the judge did this, but of course, those things are not usually of great interest. What is of interest now is the 9 months in which it is said that he received.
Chief Justice Sykes added that the judge who presided over the case cannot take account of allegations that were unsubstantiated, but has to focus on the offense for which Bartley was convicted.
The report goes on to indicate that the police seem to be saying that he is believed to be a member of the feared Hollywood gang which operates in St. Anne and its environs. But again, where is the evidence to support this? And if there is evidence, there is legislation under which the person can be charged. And all sorts of things now are being attributed to this gentleman who was convicted. But again, it comes down to the matter of evidence, and if the person is placed before the parish court, there is a limit to what the judge can give. And furthermore, there is legislation that indicates that where the person has entered a plea, then discounts ought to be taken into account. And interestingly, the report does not indicate any long list of previous convictions of any kind. So it would appear even on this report that this is a gentleman who may very well have been, as far as the court is concerned, a first offender, no previous conviction, and he's in a court that has a limit placed upon its sentencing. And the gentleman apparently was in custody for some 8 months. So all of these are factors that the judge will have to take into account and whatever other information was there. So I have no problem with criticism of judges, but we must have all the information before we criticize. And in any event, the solution to this is a simple one which the ministry is addressing, namely right of appeal by the Crown. So all of these things will be addressed in due.
Meanwhile, Chief Justice Sykes made calls for a purpose-built court for gang trials, family courts in each parish, and family division of the Supreme Court.
Should they choose to embark upon a judicial career, can see that it can end with an appointment to the Supreme Court and ultimately to the Court of Appeal. Now, the Permanent Secretary mentioned the purpose-built nature of the court, and I would thank her for that, and to make the point that we need purpose-built courts, not just for the family court, but for courts generally, and particularly when we are dealing with the gang cases, where I think those cases by their very nature require a different type of courtroom construction because of the attendant issues that come along with cases of that nature. Now, one of the interesting things about the modern communication age is that in time, each parish will have a family court with all the necessary support services that such a court has, and can provide much needed assistance to families and to persons when they have the kinds of matters that are best suited for those courts.
In news from the capital, the police locked down an illegal party at a premises on Slipen Road in Kingston last night. The patrons were ordered to disperse from the location, while the promoter was warned for prosecution under the Noise Abatement Act. The sound system was also seized under the Disaster Risk Management Act. Once a citizen complies with the police's instructions, they cannot be prosecuted. The patrons left the premises. And those are some of the stories making news. We will return with more stories as the McCann Child Care and Development Center has been approved by Cabinet to become a government grant-aided educational institution for special needs children, and business operators are being reminded to make all the necessary provisions during the transitionary 6-month grace period to become compliant before the third phase of the plastic ban is fully implemented. But first, we'll take a break, and then it's over to Christopher Scott with the very latest in sports.